Welcome in, Saints fans. We are inside Black and Gold. Steve Geller, Jeff Nowak, back from a day of training camp. We actually have a day off, and I know you are just as excited about that as I am.
Yes, I'm tired. It's just a long training camp is so much more grueling than the season from a coverage perspective, and I know people don't really care, and we don't need to complain about watching football all day. But I am tired, so if I fall asleep in the middle of this podcast, just live with it. But that will not be the most engaging version of the show. But yes, so we're gonna get into the latest from Saints camp. We have some visits from some veterans. We have some injuries that we can kind of dive into. Gonna get ready for the start of the preseason, which is now less than a week away. The Saints are going to host the Chiefs on Sunday. We haven't yet gotten to talk about Alvin Kamara's suspension on the pod, so we're going to dive into that, dive into kind of some expectations of, I think that there's a very specific route that the Saints need to make sure they take care of business on. So let's get into that. Talk about John Trey Kirkland. We'll also talk about some position battles. We have an exclusive interview with Smoke Monday that I'm going to play for y'all, and then we're going to talk about Jordan Howden, how that's all stacking up behind Marcus May, Tyrann Mathieu. And then we're going to close out by updating some of the position battles that we previewed going in. We're now entering the third week, so we're starting to get a decent picture prior to any preseason games, right? So we're going to get a lot of answers there. But right now, we can just kind of set up what we're seeing with the defensive ends, the cornerbacks, the specialists, all of that. But first things first, we had another season-ending injury over the weekend. Benjamin went down, non-contact injury. He was standing about 15 feet away from us. It looked like he was shot by a sniper, went down, ruptured Achilles. He's done for the year. He's on IR. The Saints went and signed John Trey Kirkland, former LSU wide receiver. And I had some people ask me, well, why did they do that? Is it because they're worried about wide receiver injuries? I'm like, no, he's very much going to be a special teams guy. But it is also just very cool. He's a guy from Lutcher, who's the same high school as Jarvis Landry. He said that he spent his whole first day in tears because he was so happy to be with the Saints. Spent last year on the Houston Roughnecks. And, I don't know if he's going to make the roster. All I know is he's highly motivated, right? And if anyone's out there just phoning it in, he's going to make them look bad because he wants to be here and he wants to stick around. And so, yeah, I think you're going to see him really kind of be incorporated into some special teams drills. It's a good time to be a depth wide receiver on this roster because there's two wide receivers who haven't been out there, and Traquan Smith and Rashid Shaheed dealing with groin injuries. So it's cool. Anytime they bring in an LSU guy, I get excited just because it's fun, and they never used to do that. Now they do, and I'm okay with it.
And I know we've talked a little bit about it. You're not really worried about injuries right now, but there are some pretty significant names that are on the list, like a Rashid Shaheed and Demario Davis, and I guess Andrus Peat, but like we talked about before too, you kind of expect him to be on that list.
See, it's not that I'm not worried about injuries. It's that I am not going to overreact to injuries, at least the volume of them at this point in the season. I went and looked this up yesterday just because I was curious. The Saints have 3 season-ending injuries already. It's a lot, but it's not out of track with the rest of the NFL. There were 17 teams in the NFL that have already put multiple players on injured reserve. The Saints have put on 3. I think there was 5 other teams that had 3. The Falcons actually lead that list with 5. And I think the Browns and the Giants each had 4. That was as of yesterday. I don't know. It could have increased as of today. But the Saints are not alone in this injury thing. It happens every year. Your goal at this point isn't to avoid injuries at all costs because they're going to happen. You're playing football. The goal is to avoid allowing minor injuries to become major injuries. And we saw Benjamin miss all of OTAs, all of minicamp. We don't know why, but I don't think it's a coincidence that he was dealing with something all offseason and then suddenly his Achilles just explodes on him, right? That's something that can happen. And so you're just trying to make sure stuff like that, season-altering stuff doesn't happen. And so the injuries that you're concerned about right now, and yes, Traquan and Rashid both missed a day of practice. I think when you're looking at this, they have a day off on Tuesday. And so if guys are not back on the other end of that day off, then I think you start to be like, man, even with a day off, they weren't able to kind of get back on the field. So guys like Demario Davis has missed a couple practices with a calf injury. Traquan Smith and Rashid Shaheed left early on Sunday. They were not out there on Monday. There were a few guys who just keep getting days off. Jimmy Graham got another veteran day off. JT Gray got a veteran day off today. There's also Marshawn Lattimore's first rest day.
He's earned that rest for sure.
yeah.
He's having great camp.
Yes. Yeah. No one's worried about that.
Right,
and then the
exactly.
other injuries, Coda Martin dealing with an ankle injury. He was not out there. And Lucas Krull, who went down hard
we saw that one
on Sunday, is dealing with a tailbone injury. And anyone who's had a tailbone injury, it's like you basically just feel like you can't move. It just like kind of freezes your entire lower back area. Anyway, so like and like I said, I'm not necessarily downplaying the injury part of it. I'm just saying at this point in camp, it would be foolish, especially with a veteran player like DeMario Davis, to say, "Oh, your calf isn't 100%. We're going to send you out there anyway. Figure it out. Gut through it." No, you're not going to do that. That doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? So like in that sense, I just think you got to pump the brakes and understand that this is a long season. It's a long training camp process. There's plenty of time. But I think what you see here is the Saints are bringing in players to potentially, help with that depth. And we teased this a little bit. The Saints are bringing running back Kareem Hunt and linebacker Anthony Barr for workouts. And, especially the Anthony Barr one, you start to wonder, okay, do they expect to be without DeMario Davis for an extended period of time? I think Jontre Kirkland is a guy you brought in to help mitigate the loss of Andrew Dowell on special teams.
Agreed.
I don't think that Anthony Barr is here because you lost Andrew Dowell. So I think if they end up signing him and you don't see DeMario Davis on Wednesday, you have to start to wonder if that injury is something more significant than they're letting on.
Yeah, when you see the groin and the calf injuries, those are a little more concerning because they can be lingering. Luckily, Brian Brzee also had a calf issue, but that didn't hold him out of practice.
Brzee.
What did I say? Brzee?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. We'll get there.
No, it's like we got to get like a fine jar definitely for that one.
Yeah, no, there are a good number of injuries that have come and gone. Like Brzee's back out there. We've seen a few guys have some minor injuries and get back out there. Throckmorton has gotten back out after. I've just decided to start calling him Throckmorton because it feels like it's his first and last name is Throckmorton. He had an elbow injury. He's back. So we're going to keep going. Trevor Penning has gotten a couple rest days. And he dealt with a minor foot issue, but he was out there today. So, you take the good with the bad. I think it's not something I'm super concerned with. The Kareem Hunt workout is interesting to me because it indicates that Kareem Hunt doesn't really have a market. Because if you're Kareem Hunt and you're thinking like I can still contribute and be a big factor for an NFL team,
right?
You would be going to a team where even without Alvin, and we haven't talked about this yet, but obviously Alvin's suspended for 3 games, so he'd have probably a significant role for 3 games. But even then, you're talking about like, is he backing up Jamal Williams? Like, they're not going to sign him off the street and say you're the RB2 now. So you would be signing to be a backup to the backup.
Yeah.
And then you're competing with a rookie who I think has looked really good in Kendre Miller. And it's like, why would Kareem do that unless he has no market? Which maybe he does. Maybe they'll be able to bring him in on a minimum contract and get a quality veteran in the room. But I don't know what they're going to guarantee him in terms of a role that would be like if he didn't like it in Cleveland, where he was the premium backup to Nick Chubb. I mean, this is way far beyond that, right? Like once Kamara and Williams are back, I don't know if you'd be able to get him on the field. So that's a strange one to me because if you're trying to replace Eno Benjamin,
right?
He wasn't probably going to make the roster. So I don't know. It's a weird one. We'll just have to see how that plays out.
No, like you mentioned, Jontre Kirkland, he's not replacing Andrew Dowell on kind of thing. But the signing, you would think of Hunt, if that happens, would correlate obviously with losing someone like Eno Benjamin. And yeah, why is there no market for Hunt in the fact that he'd be willing to be RB4 on the Saints right now?
Yeah, it reminds you of the Adrian Peterson signing if they ended up making it, right? the last time the Saints drafted a running back in the third round, and everyone was super excited about Adrian Peterson, right? And
Yeah.
then you saw Alvin in the preseason, and you saw him in week 1 against the Vikings, and you're like,
Oh,
yeah, I don't think Adrian's the guy. And he was gone by like week 3. I think they ended up trading him, actually. I think they traded
did.
him to the Cardinals for like
Correct.
nothing.
You got great memory.
Yeah. I don't know what they traded him for. Maybe like a late pick.
Right.
But
Oh, totally.
either way, like he was out of town very quickly because you didn't need him. And I don't know. It feels like you're kind of doing the same thing if you bring in Kareem. But I mean, I wouldn't complain about it. Depth is great, and you would have. I already think the Saints have one of the better running back rooms in the league, but from top to bottom, and that would only increase that. So, if he's willing to take a small role to just be part of that room, then great. But if he's going to be a malcontent and complain about not getting his opportunities, then that becomes a tough equation for me.
I had to look just to, check out his age. He hasn't hit that dreaded 29-year-old
No, he's 27.
mark yet. Yeah, he's 28. He turned August 6th. He just turned 28.
He just turned 28. Yeah,
right,
okay.
exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, he's been very productive. He's a good pass catching running back. He ran for 1,300 yards as a rookie. He hasn't really gotten an opportunity since then to be that guy, right? Like he hasn't really been in a situation where he's just able to get 20, 25 carries or 20, 25 touches. Like when Nick Chubb has been healthy, Nick Chubb has been hurt at points and he has gotten a longer run for the Browns and he's played well. But yeah. And all this kind of comes back to Alvin Kamara is suspended for 3 games. It's going to be the home opener against the Titans, then the Monday Night Football matchup in Carolina against the Panthers, and then week 3 at the Packers up in Green Bay. His first game back will be week 4 when the Saints host the Bucks. And I've been kind of looking at this and trying to figure out, okay, what's a reasonable expectation? What do the Saints have to do to come out of this, get it and enter week 4 feeling like, okay, we have survived the 3-game absence of Alvin Kamara? And what would you want to see out of that 3-game stretch?
Even with or without Alvin, to me, 2-1 would be ideal. Obviously, I just think what's really weird is the toughest matchup and scariest one is your home game against Tennessee, just because I think they have more talent around, on offense and defense all around, kind of thing. But the other 2 are on the road, and you never discount that. Definitely at Green Bay. Luckily, it's not late in the season, but that's a tough venue. And man, Carolina, I always call them the pesky Panthers. They always are a problem for this team, and it's a division opponent.
Yeah, the way I look at it is, I would honestly, obviously you want to be 3-0,
right?
You'd also love to be 2-1, and be able to say, yeah, we're afloat without Alvin, and we made it. To me, the bare minimum that I have to see is I think they really need to go up to Carolina and win that game week 2. If you're playing Andy Dalton, you're playing primetime Andy, and we all know that Andy Dalton cannot win a primetime game to save his life. I mean, I think he's lost something like 17 in a row. So you feel good about that. Or you were getting Bryce Young in his first or second career start, and you cannot lose to that guy, right? The second matchup, if Bryce ends up starting week 1, by the time you get to the second matchup, sure. I'm not discounting the idea of like a rookie being up to speed by that point. In week 2, you should be able to fool a rookie, right? You should be able to stick it to a rookie. And so to me, if you come out of that 3-game stretch at 1-2, but you are 1-1 in the NFC and you are 1-0 in the NFC South, to me, that's fine. I really, and if you come out of that at 2-1 and you're 2-0 in the NFC and 1-0 in the NFC South, then that's fantastic. I honestly don't care about the season opener so much. Obviously, you want to win it, but it's an AFC opponent. I mean, like if you lose that game, I know everyone's gonna freak out, but I'm not losing sleep over it because you're gonna lose games, and if that's the one you lose, that's the best case scenario in terms of if you went 2-1 the games you would want to win are Packers and Panthers. And also keep in mind, we talk about Bryce Young in his second career start or first career start. You're also getting Jordan Love in his third career start. Like, you should be able to take advantage of that too. So the Saints have favorable quarterback matchups in 2 of those 3 games. And even without Alvin, I'd like to see them run the ball effectively and win those games. So that's kind of where I look at. I don't think that, you're going to be in that bad of shape. You just can't go 0-3.
A wild, I don't know about wild, but a stat, when Alvin Kamara is out, he's missed 10 regular season games. The Saints have gone 3-7 in those games. So not the greatest track record of the team dealing without Alvin.
No, but I mean, he's also averaged 3 games missed each of the last 2 seasons. I think it was 4 in 2021 and 2 last year, so it evens out. But
Yeah.
so I mean, that's 14 games. If you have him for 14 games, that's a reasonable number. Like, that's what you would probably expect going into a year. How many games can you actually expect out of a running back? 14 is a winning number. It means you didn't have any super significant injuries. You look at it and you're like, okay, week 4 through week 10, you should get full speed Alvin. Then you have a week off. You get 7 games, then a bye, and then 7 more games.
And
So
considering too what we all thought the team would be facing, that
yeah,
we all thought 6 games was coming, and then we got half of that to deal with. And I think everybody from fans to the team to Alvin is really pretty happy, and there's not going to be appeal on that at all for sure.
No. It's happening.
Right,
And
exactly.
we talked to Alvin. He was very contrite. He's very apologetic. We don't need to get into too much of it because it was last Friday, which feels like a lifetime ago at this point. But one thing I did ask Alvin, and one thing that has stood out to me, and we can get into this before we go to break, is Alvin the last 2 years to me has been very de-emphasized in the passing game. He has caught a decent number of passes, but it hasn't been the downfield passes. You haven't seen him break out on wheel routes. You haven't seen him stress the defense up the seam, and that's a problem. He hasn't gone over 500 receiving yards either of the last 2 seasons. He averaged something like 700 yards in his first 4 seasons. The first 3, he had exactly 81 catches all 3 times, which
That's
is
wild, right?
wild in itself. Because I don't think they were trying. I think it just happened, which is crazy. Maybe I bet the 3rd time they were trying. They were just like, yeah, okay.
Let's get you that one more, so you have 81 again.
Yeah, I mean, what like the 2nd time they were like, "Wow, that's crazy! I can't believe that happened." The 3rd time, it's like you're trying a little bit. But so we've seen him break out on a few wheel routes. At the expense of Zach Bond. I keep making a joke every time because if Derek Carr sees Zach Bond in coverage on a running back or a fast guy, he's going at him every single time. And you know what? I expect other teams to do the same thing. But we've seen Alvin match up with him on wheel routes and just. They've looked good. And so I asked Alvin about that, and this is what he said. Alvin, we saw you connect with Derek on a deep wheel route today. I think we've seen that at least a few times this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
That downfield passing game with you seems like it might have been de-emphasized a little bit the last
season.
Is that something you expect to get back to?
Yeah, and I think Derek wants to more than anything. I mean, obviously, I know what can happen when we got that going. So, I mean, I'm just happy, like jumping for joy, when we can when I see those play calls in, or when we get things like that going, and Derek's excited also. I think the offense is excited, from JT to RC to Pete, all these guys, and then DA stand back there and he just give his little nod of approval and we keep it moving.
So JT, running backs coach Joel Thomas, RC, quarterbacks coach Ronald Curry, and then Pete is obviously offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael. In case you didn't keep up with all the initials. But no, I mean, like, I think that's, in a lot of instances, you'll ask a guy a question and you'll get kind of the cliche back to you. Yeah, we're going to do whatever works. And we're going to do whatever it takes to win. He's pretty honest right there. Where he's just like, yeah, we're going to do that this year. And I'm excited about it because he also wants to be involved in the passing game. And I think with a guy like Jamal Williams, who can take a lot of the load. I think part of the reason you didn't involve Alvin so much is because last year you didn't really, Mark was there, but he wasn't a guy you could lean on. And so you needed Alvin in those kind of grinding situations. And obviously you did have Taysom as well. But this year, I think knowing that you have Jamal who can take some of that burden, that you can use Alvin and keep his pitch count at a reasonable number while also including him in the pass game. And you also have a quarterback who wants to take advantage of it. So, which is interesting too, because Josh Jacobs was never a receiving back. So I think we'll see that again in the Saints offense, and I'm excited about it.
Oh, for sure. Like, Alvin Kamara was, that multi-dimensional back that, like you said, the receiving yardage wasn't there the past 2 seasons. I wonder how coincidental that is when you don't have a guy like Drew Brees around. We'll see if the Saints can get back to that now with Derek Carr at the helm, because it just wasn't working before that. I thought last year too. Obviously, the issues with the offensive line, which shoot, we could say that going into this year too as well. But really excited just for everything around Alvin and his offense this year because of that case now being behind them too. We talked about, a weight being off you. I understand that totally. And yeah, he's looking for a little retribution, which is good because we keep talking about folks on this team with a chip on their shoulder. And I think Alvin's one of those guys too.
Yeah, I think if you asked him last year that he would have said no, it was not a factor, and
Absolutely
DA would
right.
have probably been like, "Oh, listen, whatever he said." But now that it's over, you're getting honest answers, and yes, it did affect him. I mean, I don't know. Again, I've said this before. I don't know if it affected him on the field in his play. I think he was playing well, but I think in every aspect of your life, something like that can hit you and affect you. It's weird because I thought when they went from Jameis to Andy, we would see more Kamara. We would see more receiving Kamara, but you really didn't. Andy didn't take advantage of him in the passing game either. And I think that was one of his biggest flaws. No screens, no just check downs.
Right.
He caught 57 passes. I don't remember them. I think a lot of them were just dump offs that were not well designed. He had one long catch against the Raiders and that touchdown. He had a couple touchdowns in that game. But yeah, so that's that to me. That there's a lot of ways this offense can get better. And one of the things we didn't talk about was the 2-minute drill today. Derek Carr looks fantastic. He went 6 for 6, got him down the field, set up a field goal. It was a end of first half scenario. So it wasn't like okay, this is a game-winning field goal. Okay, we have to get into the end zone. But he just marched him down the field. He got him a chip shot field goal, going to the half, 3 points free. And it was one of those moments where you're like, okay, what can Derek do that I think Jameis is not as adept at? And you saw Jameis struggle mightily in that drill, and he made a couple throws, and I was just like, why? You were at like the 32-yard line. You're in field goal range, but you just want to. At worst, you want to make sure that you are giving your kicker the easiest kick possible. And he went deep to Kiki Kuti and it missed. He went deep down the right sideline and it missed. And then he just threw it away, gave Blake Grupe a 45-yard kick, and he missed it.
And I was going to say, and then the kicker missed.
Yeah. And so that if put that in a real game scenario, and suddenly you just lost 3 points because you didn't execute that correctly. And so I think that's Derek Carr has had a couple rough days of practice as he kind of works his way into this offense. But I think utilizing Kamara, utilizing Juwan Johnson, moving the ball effectively, getting in and out of the huddle, and those are the things that you see with Derek, that are clearly. I don't even want to say an upgrade. He's just good at it. Like you can see that is something he is strong with. And it's not a coincidence that he has all these fourth quarter comebacks, because those are the moments that I think he steps up in. And so, I think there's a lot to be excited about with this offense this year. And even though I won't see it until week 4, I think Alvin's a big part of that.
Yeah, and from what Dennis Allen said today after practice, the fact that we're going to see Carr Sunday against the Chiefs, which to me makes total sense. We need to just get our starters there out in this limited preseason nowadays. Although they do have, we kind of talked about it a little bit too. Besides the 3 preseason games, not 1 but 2 joint practice sessions, which I love seeing that. Unfortunately, won't be out west. You'll be going out there to watch the ones against the Chargers, but definitely looking forward to the ones against the Houston Texans here, just because of the amount of work you're able to get in. And yeah, it's not the same old reps against the same guys. You see the competition really step up.
Yeah, Yeah, and I think there's a chance you see the starters in week 1. You don't see them week 2 or 3 because of
Right.
that, because you have those joint reps. But yeah, DA did say that he wants to get the starters in there, and I agree. I think you should try to get the starters in there. I think as far as Carr is concerned, as long as you have as long as you have your starting offensive lineman available to protect him, he can go in there. If you do not, then he cannot.
That might be a trick question because you have Andrews as a starting
James is the
offensive
starter.
lineman.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, James Hurst is the starter,
I was gonna
and
say,
I'm perfectly fine putting him out there. But if you don't have Ryan, right? If you're not ready to get Ryan Ramczyk in the game, if you're not ready to get Cesar Ruiz in the game, then no, you're not putting him out there and saying, "Okay, good luck, Storm." Right. Yeah. But all right, we're gonna get into some more for players that we are expecting to see kind of compete in that first preseason game. We're going to talk about the safeties, and not even the starting safeties. We kind of know what to expect with them, but who are the guys behind them? Who are some of these depth guys? So we're going to dive into that and talk about Smoke Monday, Jordan Howden, get some exclusive audio at you. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. Follow us on Twitter. I'm still calling it Twitter. I don't care. At Saints_pod. That's the show. You can follow me at Jeff_Nowak. Him at Steve Geller WWO, and the latest Saints content at WWL.com. On AM 870 FM 105.3 and always free on the Audacy app. Stick around. And we're back here on Inside Black and Gold. And this is going to be the safety segment. Do you feel safe, Steve? We'll get through it.
I do feel safe.
That's good. That's good to hear. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. And we're going to talk about the safeties, but we're not necessarily going to talk about Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus May, because I think we know what to expect. It's one of the few positions on this roster that I don't think there is any question as to who the starters are. It doesn't matter. You're starting Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus May. But what happens if Marcus May is unavailable? What happens if he gets suspended? What happens if Tyrann Mathieu gets hurt or misses a game for whatever reason? Who's going to go in? And I think it's a reasonable question. You have guys like Jonathan Abram, Lonnie Johnson Jr., veterans. But I think that when you look at it, it's going to end up being the younger safeties, the younger defensive backs who get the first shot at it. Because I don't think you want to cut Jordan Howden to keep a guy like Jonathan Abram around. I think you'd like to keep Smoke Monday if you could. I think that Jordan is first in line, and we're going to go from there. But one of the things I was able to ask Dennis Allen this week is kind of just like why is it difficult to get on the field as a rookie safety? And it is. The Saints actually did it a couple years back with Marcus Williams, and it went really well until it didn't. Until the worst moment,
right?
The worst tackle attempt you have ever seen in your life reared its ugly head at the worst possible time in Minnesota in the playoffs. And, it's like, I think everyone had forgotten that Marcus Williams was a rookie until that moment. And you're like, no. And so I think there is a learning curve, and it's a position that from going from college to the NFL, it is very different. There's a lot of changes in communication and responsibilities. The coverages are a lot more complex. The offenses you're going against aren't necessarily more complex, but the athletes are all better, and they can all get over the top at all times. And so I asked Dennis Allen. Dennis Allen answered a few questions on this subject, and I thought he gave some good insight. So here you go.
Where are we at as far as with the depth of the safety position? Still something could come about from Marcus May. Who would be that guy alongside Tyrann Mathieu? Is it Howden or?
I think it's a good competition. I don't think we're at the point where we've made up our mind on any of those spots. I think this is the time of camp, and as we get into preseason games where guys begin to separate themselves a little bit, I think it's really good competition in that room, and I think it's the evaluation process takes time, so we're not going to make any quick decisions, but I like the room.
Has Jordan Howden put himself in that mix, maybe even quicker than you'd expect for a day 3 draft pick? Has he shown?
Yeah, look, I think all those guys are in the mix,
Thanks.
And we're evaluating everything they do on a daily basis, and he's done some good things. There's still some things that you see where he's still a rookie, so he's still learning. But he's getting better every single day and coming out here and working, and So we'll let the evaluation process play out.
I think Marcus Williams started as a rookie. I guess what are some of the challenges in taking at the safety position for a rookie, just like getting into the NFL level?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, operating in the passing game. Making sure you're putting your eyes in the right spot. Because the difference in our league, I think, is there's a lot more intricacy in terms of the route combinations that you see, the ability of the quarterbacks to throw the football, the receivers that you're going up against. So I would say, that position, there's a lot of communication that goes on at that position. And so making sure, like, you're in charge of putting a lot of guys in the right spot when you play that position. And so that's a challenge. And then, being disciplined enough to do exactly what you're supposed to do on every single play, because in this league, when you don't, the offense takes advantage of it.
Yeah, and I think he got into a few interesting things there. One being, communication is very important, and you have to trust that player to communicate and also understand what he's communicating, right? It's a do or die position in the sense that if you mess up on the defensive front and, you leave a gap, there's 3 or 4 other players that can come and fill that gap and prevent a big play. If you mess up on the back end and you're not where you're supposed to be, you're setting up an 80-yard touchdown, right? So the consequences of not being right can be severe. So you have to trust that position. You have to trust that player. And I think that's part of the reason you've seen the Saints err toward bringing in veterans rather than you drafting and playing young guys and just hoping for the best. So, I thought that was interesting. And he also brought up the quarterbacks can get the ball out there. They can burn you a lot easier at the NFL level because everyone can make that throw. And so I think it is interesting. And so, maybe that does skew a little bit toward the Smoke Monday, who has an extra year of experience. I don't know. All I know is that Jordan Howden has been getting the kind of first team reps behind the Marcus Mays and the Tyrann Matthews. When one of those two guys misses a day for a rest day or whatever, he's been the guy who gets up there first. So I think that's a sign that they do like him. And it's just a question of, can he come along fast enough? I think these preseason games are going to be really important for him.
Yeah, you mentioned that the safety chart depth is pretty impressive. There might be some names that folks don't know, but, with the Jonathan Abram, the Lonnie Johnson Jr., you're talking about Jordan Howden. I didn't think that Howden would be considered for that initial road just because he's the green guy, Mr. The rookie that doesn't have the experience, where even like an Ugo Amadi has at least time in this league. But I guess that they're, like you mentioned, the trust issue. I guess they're trusting Jordan Howden, or at least seeing if he can be that dude, I guess.
JT Gray's also a guy that I think,
right.
They played at points last year. He's obviously not your first option, but if you just need somebody in a pinch, I think he makes a lot of sense. We got a chance to sit down and talk with Smoke Monday today. So let's listen to that interview. I think, a lot of people are excited about Smoke. He's an intriguing guy. He can get downhill. He can be a thumper. I think he's more of a strong safety than a free safety. I think he's a guy that you can profile as, a defensive back blitzer guy. He's been in the backfield a lot in that regard. I think he has good instincts there. But here's that interview with Steve, Bobby, and Mike with Mr. Monday.
You had a bit of a redshirt year, obviously, last season due to injury. How's it feel coming into year 2, and how you doing right now?
Man, I'm doing good physically, mentally, man. Being out that year, it was kind of tough when I got it. I had to have surgery, but I had guys like Marcus May, Tyrann, Marshawn Lattimore, keeping my heads up. And, with guys like that in the room, man, I felt good to come back into my year 2 and ready to ball with those guys.
And Smoke, when you say going into your second year, do you feel now, since you've been around the system, mentally that you're on top of things, considering, that it's a learning process, you're in the meetings and all that, but where you at mentally, you ready to roll and understand the concepts what they're doing, right?
Definitely, I'm ready to roll. Whatever he call, I'm out there. I know my responsibility. And that's the biggest thing, man. That's the biggest thing the guys harp on in the room. Just make sure you know your job and everything will be fine.
Smoke, you've always been a physical player, aggressive guy. The coverage part of the game, you've really worked at it to be a better cover guy.
Yeah. Man, I've been working so hard at that, coming out of college, a lot of guys, that was one of the biggest things. Oh, can he cover, can he do this, But like I said, I got guys like Marcus May giving me tips on how to play off man versus receivers, tight end, anybody they put out there. So I'm just still, I'm still learning, still getting better every day, and I feel like I got a whole lot better in that area of my game.
Special teams part of that'll be a big part of your game also.
Definitely. I love special team, man. It's when you only get one chance, you only get one shot at it. So Coach Riggs is teaching us to go out and do what we do, go out and have swag, go out and play ball and play physical.
And Smoke, to get the coach's attention, and obviously they film everything. And yesterday you come up with a big interception. Today you almost had one. Is that something where making plays on the ball, you get the coach's attention just by you're taking away the football, which was one thing we need to get better as a whole defensive unit, which we did not do last year.
Yeah, man. Like Coach D.A. coming to the meeting room, starting the training camp, the biggest thing that we needed to get better at was taking the ball away, and we emphasize that every single day, whether if it's a top-down punch-out, interception, any way we can get the ball, try to get the ball in our hands.
Go back, 2019. LSU Auburn. I remember Coach O, man, it was a war out there with them guys. They gave him a great game. So your thoughts on that 2019 game, Joe Burrow and LSU going up against your defense. Y'all were awesome that year.
Man, going into that game, we knew that it was averaging about 40, 50 points a game. And we just thought, just slow them down. As much as we can slow them down, as we did, man. We went out and played 3-down linemen, 6 DBs, and the rest is history. They went on to win the national championship with undefeated season. But like I said, that was a great team. But we also had a great defense that year.
Smoke, I'm always intrigued. I got a nickname, Cajun Cannon. Yeah. So where you get a nickname like Smoke? I said I like that. Smoke Monday, Smoke Tuesday.
I had a feeling that was coming.
Well, he was so excited when they signed you.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a movie.
Yeah.
But what a great football name.
So my grandfather, when I was little, I'm more of a grandparents' baby. So all my grandmas love me, all my granddads love me, and my dad, great grandfather, he was one of the closest ones I was to, and I used to just be around him a lot, just run around the house a lot. So he just started calling me Smoke. So when he passed when I was about 12, I just used that to honor him. And every day I hear that name, it makes me think of him, to go out and grind and make him proud.
Awesome.
Looking ahead, obviously, preseason action coming on Sunday. How much you looking forward to actual game action? I'm sure getting ready to hit another team besides your own dudes.
For me, the biggest thing I'm ready for is hitting. I'm ready to hit. That's what I do. I'm just ready to go out and show my physical capabilities, and also try to get the ball in my hands a couple times. But I'm definitely trying to hit somebody.
Definitely looking forward to seeing you and the rest of the team in action on Sunday. Appreciate the time. Smoke Monday. Good luck, and have a great rest of camp too.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
He did get a pick today.
He did. Well, no, not today.
Yesterday.
Yeah. He almost got one today. But either way, it was nice. He undercut a Jake Haener pass. I think he was going to Kiki Kuti, maybe. It's late in the day. He was trying to make something happen, and Smoke made a good play on it. I think if I recall correctly, he didn't play in a preseason game last year. I think he got hurt early in camp. And so, it's big for him. Even if he doesn't make this roster, getting on the field in the preseason and putting tape out there is valuable. Right. One thing that you see these guys work out with teams, and they do these workouts and they go for practice and whatnot. That tape isn't getting passed around. You're not making another team based on the tape you put down in practice, because the Saints aren't sharing that. But they can't hide the preseason tape. If you go out there and you ball out, other teams get to see that. And then, if they end up trying to stash you on the practice squad and someone else is like, no, we want him, they claim him and they go out there and, it's not great for the Saints if that happens. But for a player who's just trying to make it in the league, that is invaluable. You don't get a lot of opportunities to put NFL tape on the table. And that is one of them. So I'm looking forward to seeing him out there. He is a guy who you root for. He's a guy who can, he talks about he wants to hit somebody. He can hit, he can thump.
Right.
He's a big dude. And so, yeah, I think, there's a realistic, you'd ideally like to see some higher profile names, but, I think there's a reasonable thing where you look maybe 2-3 years down the road, guys like Jordan Howden and Smoke Monday are both integral pieces in this Saints secondary. Kind of like a PJ Williams, right? Like, he kind of never really burst onto the scene, but he was a valuable player for a long time. Now he's doing something. I don't know. Maybe he went back to Tallahassee, but
I guess credit to DA since he's a secondary guy. But you look at the DBs and the safeties, I feel like there really is solid depth up and down there.
Yeah, well, especially when you bring in a Tyrann Mathieu and you say we're going to fill everyone behind him. But I do like the idea that they have young guys learning from Tyrann Mathieu. Yes. It was the most annoying thing to me when Malcolm Jenkins retired and you could not point to a single safety on this roster who was better for playing with Malcolm Jenkins because Marcus Williams also left. So, that drives me nuts. It drives me nuts when you have these veteran players who can't impart any wisdom whatsoever to the guys that are replacing them. And that's what happened there. But hey, it doesn't work all the time either. It just annoyed me to see Marcus Williams leave, Malcolm Jenkins retire, and then be like, well, I guess we're going out and signing people because we have not been developing anybody at that position. Yeah.
No, sadly, you mentioned obviously Marcus Williams, Avon Bell. They drafted decent at the spot, but just they didn't re-sign the dudes.
Yeah, Vaccaro was fine too. Like they draft well at safety. They just don't pay at safety unless you get old, and then they pay you. I don't know. It's weird. But if I was handicapping it today, I would say Smoke Monday is a practice squad guy, and Jordan Howden sneaks in on the final cut. I did put up an updated roster projection today.
Okay.
You can check that out at WWL.com. And that's what I had. I have Jordan Howden on there. Because I think at this point in the preseason, you're leaning toward draft picks because you don't want to cut your draft picks, right? Like someone said, we want this guy, we're going to draft him, and then cutting them is like, well, we screwed up, right? We're not even going to give him a chance. We screwed up. Or it doesn't always mean that. Sometimes it means you really found a great UDFA, you just don't have space for him. But if it's a tie, it's going to go to the draft pick, right? You're never going to be like, well, yeah. Anyway, so I think that's where in my projection, I have Howden there because I think you're going to give him a shot. And these next 3 games, these preseason games, are going to be hugely important for that position. And you might end up seeing that, Jonathan Abram, we haven't really been talking about him, but man, he looks good. Maybe he steals that spot, a veteran, and you kind of go. But for now, that's where I have it. And I can tell you my DB depth chart here. A second. And you're looking at
obviously JT Gray's in the mix because of special teams.
Yes.
I'm just curious. Do you have Abram or Ugo?
I have Ugo on there because I think he's your backup slot. I also have Lonnie Johnson Jr. on there, a guy who did get an interception today.
Yes, that was the one.
And
I had to pick.
We haven't really talked about Lonnie Johnson that much. I think his versatility is going to be a huge part in why the Saints want to keep him around. You saw them keep around PJ Williams. They don't keep around PJ Williams if he does not have that cross-positional flexibility. If PJ Williams is a cornerback, he's not sticking around for 5 seasons, but I think Dennis Allen is obsessed with cross-positional flexibility. And, he's not wrong. I think it is valuable because it allows you to maybe slim the numbers down when you don't have to keep an extra safety and an extra cornerback. You can just keep one. And so I think he's a guy who makes a lot of sense and that's probably the roster spot that if Smoke Monday steals one, it's that one. But I like the extra cornerback there because if you get into a bind and you lose a couple corners, right? If 2 of your corners are out with injuries and suddenly you have to go to one, are you going to take Bradley out of the slot and move him outside? I'd rather not. I'd rather only have one guy playing out of position if I can avoid it. And so it's like, okay, Lonnie, go out there, see what you got. And because otherwise you have Bradley going outside a position he hasn't played a lot of, and then Ugo going into the slot. So you have a backup. And it's kind of like when you lose your center and they move Caesar over rather than, anyway. So that's where I have it right now. But obviously, Marshawn, Paulson, Alante, Bradley, Ugo Amadi, Lonnie Johnson Jr., then Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus May, Jordan Howden, and JT Gray is that 10 defensive backs, which is usually the number. You could theoretically add another one and maybe lose a fullback. I do have a fullback on here, so there is kind of a built-in free space that if I want to keep anybody specific, I can always just cut the fullback and add that name. But I am only keeping 8 offensive linemen, which is not enough. I don't have a backup center on there. It's kind of how I cheated my way into keeping some guys that I probably should have cut. But yeah, I think that's going to be the question: is can Smoke do enough to outshine a Lonnie Johnson?
Yeah, and that whole, like I said, that secondary group is very intriguing because obviously we've written down names like a Troy Pride, Anthony Johnson, even too, Yadam. Yeah. There's still a lot of depth there, and it's going to be interesting to see who they're able to even hold on to just on the practice squad even, or who ends up getting, a chance with another team somewhere.
All 3 of those guys you named have played well enough to make a roster.
Right.
Like if this was not the deepest cornerback group I've ever seen the Saints have, you would be looking at an Anthony Johnson and saying, how do we cut this guy? But the numbers are going to make it difficult. And if I had to handicap them, I would say Anthony Johnson, Isaac Yiadom, Troy Pride. But they're all very close. They've all played very well. I just think Anthony Johnson's upside. He has the size. He has the build. He's very confident. DA has talked. He's raved about him a little bit. And so, yeah. But no, you make a good point. Like, this is a very deep group. If you could stash all 3 of those guys on the practice squad, you'd feel great about it. One thing that I didn't mention in the open was the Alvin Kamara suspension is interesting because you can elevate guys 3 times. And that's why getting onto a practice squad now, with these new kind of rules in place, is a much different scenario than it used to be. So, like, you don't have to necessarily keep your 4th running back on the roster. You can just keep him on the practice squad and elevate him the first 3 weeks of the season. And now I don't think a guy like Kareem Hunt is going to be satisfied with that scenario. But if you want to do that with a Kirk Merritt, right. So I don't know. I think it's interesting because you do have the option to get guys on the practice squad and get them into games. So if you can keep those guys around, it's going to be valuable down the stretch of the season because injuries always happen.
No, that's actually good that you mentioned even Kirk Merritt. I don't know if we brought up the fact that he did leave practice early on Monday. Not much information was given on what exactly he's dealing with, but even more of a reason, I guess, you want another running back in to work out just because, numbers are starting to get a little thin as we head into the first preseason game at running back, obviously.
Yeah, running back, wide receiver. There's going to be plenty of time for these guys to make an impact. But let's end that segment there. We're going to come back. We're going to talk more about the defensive end battle and some other roster battles that have been going on. Just kind of update where they are at to close out this episode. And then, obviously we have a preseason game coming up. So we'll dive into that a lot more in the next episode. But I just want to kind of reset where we are at with some of the roster battles we talked about heading into the preseason. But all right, this is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. Keep it locked here. And we're back. One more segment on Inside Black and Gold. We're going to get into some roster battles, kind of reset prior to the week 1 preseason game on where things stand, what we have seen thus far. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. And, one of the bigger roster battles that we talked about and we have been talking about is that way because it's a starting position, right? And anytime you're having a roster battle for a starting job, it gets a little intense. And we've seen Peyton Turner, we've seen Carl Granderson kind of go back and forth. Peyton Turner was getting the first team reps to start camp. I think Carl has maybe taken over a bit of that over the last couple practices. I don't know if it's, you're not necessarily going 1-2. I think they're just kind of switching in and out and getting different matchups and seeing how things play out. But it's been good to watch. And what I will say is that both have looked good. What you don't want to see in a roster battle is one guy looks okay and the other guy just looks like he's in shambles or is hurt and can't get out there. And in this case, Peyton Turner has not missed a practice yet, which is notable in and of itself because he's a guy who has struggled to get on the field consistently. And I don't think Carl Granderson, he might have missed one day, but he's been there for the majority of these camp practices too. And, I think if it's a rotation, it's not a big deal. Like, you don't need to be the starter to make an impact, but having two viable guys that you can rotate in there, I think the Saints are in good position.
Granderson is definitely a guy I'm excited about just because we've seen his growth. Every single year has been steady. Like you mentioned too, training camp has been really solid for him. Blew up another run play I saw today. And I just think he's got some really good pass rush moves on him. Anxious to see that growth even more into this year. Peyton Turner was someone we've been hard on, obviously, going into this season because of his limited availability, but has definitely been someone that, has risen to the occasion this camp. It has been that competition. There hasn't been the one-sided, oh, well, this is Grandy's job right now, and Peyton Turner looks lost. No, it's been very much, I feel like, neck and neck, and one that I guess we're going to kind of find out who's going to be that dude come, a preseason game scenario, since it is, your live game settings kind of deal, and I guess those joint practices too, because so far in training camp, it really has been even between Granderson and Turner for me.
Let's go out there and try to play hard, and just try to have a motive. Just try to go every play 100 miles per hour, not stay on blocks, get off blocks, and, win with technique. That's the biggest thing that I'm trying to focus on right now, on this technique. And continue to just to have that mindset just to come out and destroy my opponents. So speed comes with it. I'm a little shifty too, but my number one thing is stopping the run so we can have some fun.
That's their catchphrase.
Yeah,
Stop the run.
It's that little jab too I love in there that he puts in of I'm my goal, destroy my opponents. I want to hear that from my defenders.
Yeah, I want them in pieces on the ground in front of me. So that was Carl Granderson, the former Wyoming Vandal? No, what is Wyoming?
Idaho is the Vandals.
Idaho's the Vandals.
Right.
Wyoming, I got to look it up.
Bobby would know.
Cowboys. Former Wyoming Cowboy, Carl Granderson.
Makes sense.
These guys, one of the interesting things when you talk about NFL players coming into or college players transition to the NFL at the end positions is I think that there is an optimal playing weight for everybody, but you don't necessarily know what it is. The first couple of years, they kind of fluctuate a little bit. Peyton Turner said he came in to the league at 270. Last year, he was playing at about 287, and he found that was too heavy. It was not the right weight for him. He slimmed down to about 278 in that range. And I think that that's something that, you kind of figure it out. Chris Olave gained some weight this offseason, put on some muscle. That's something that I think sometimes it takes a couple of years to kind of sort out. And one thing that everyone says about Peyton Turner, and you can see it in flashes, is he's very quick off the line. For a big guy, he gets on you right away. And I think that speed is something that you don't want to sacrifice with some extra bulk, because 287 for an end is heavy. I mean, even 270 for an end is heavy, so he's not a speed rusher. He's built like a power rusher, but if you can marry that, it's interesting. And Peyton Turner talked a bit today about, just being healthy, right? Because it's just something that we haven't had.
Oh, I feel good. I feel that I've been really just focused on technique and stuff. I think that my pass rush has been going better than this time last year, because also part of that just me having a healthy offseason, being able to practice that throughout the offseason and come in here and apply some of that. So I feel like it's been going well.
Do you feel like you've taken a step forward?
I do. I think we're really competitive across the board, and I've just been playing well.
Definitely for me, the first time we're really hearing Peyton Turner with that confidence when he speaks too.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you play 10 games over 2 seasons, it starts to be a mental thing,
Sure.
a lot more than a physical thing. And we just haven't seen him be consistently available. And when he has been available, we haven't seen him be consistently productive. He had 2 sacks in one game last year. That's a sack and a half more than Marcus Davenport had over the entire season.
Ouch.
So that position has been kind of a black hole in terms of production, and it hurts Cam across the way. Like when you can single that guy and win, the guy opposite Cam, that means you can double Cam or double an interior lineman to create holes in the running game. And that's a big advantage to the offense. Your one-on-one players have to be able to win. And so hopefully that can happen. But if I was handicapping it right now, I would say that Carl Granderson is probably the starter, but you're going to see a lot of Peyton Turner reps. You're going to see that rotation happen a lot. You're going to see a lot of NASCAR package where the ends shift inside and in passing situations. They've been working on that a good bit this offseason. And so and again, I'm okay with that. I don't necessarily need Peyton Turner to start, but I do need him to get reps and to be available in big situations, particularly pass rush situations, because I think Carl Granderson is a better run player than Peyton is. So I'm okay with him being in there on early downs, but I want Peyton getting after the quarterback. And so that's what I want to see in these first couple preseason games is, okay, let's see you in the backfield. Let's see you win some of these sets against the second stringers from the Chiefs, right?
Yeah, the one thing too we're going to be looking for, I think, in this preseason game is, hello, Isaiah Foskey, where are you? Are you anywhere to be found? It's been a rough go this early on in training camp, and it's almost like a joke now every day. It's like, did you write down Foskey's name at all?
Nope.
Right.
Yeah, he's just a non-factor right now, and I haven't heard many people complaining about it because I don't think they even know. Like when you make mistakes and you screw up and you get kind of noticed. He hasn't done that, so I guess you could say that like you haven't noticed any major gaffes or blunders, but that's really not what we're looking for right now. We're looking for impact players, and he just hasn't been that. But one more position battle we can get into. Actually, let's talk about the 2 position battles that I think are pretty much settled right now.
Okay.
Will Lutz is your starting kicker. I like Blake Grippy looks great. He hit from 59 today. He went 9 of 10, but he did miss the one kind of pressure kick that he had, which was the one that would have made Jameis Winston's 2-minute drill look a lot better than it was, because it would have been the same result as Derek Carr's, even though his was a chip shot, but he missed that one. And that's not a good look when my biggest concern about moving on from Will for the sake of the young guy is I trust Will in pressure situations, and I don't know if I trust Blake in pressure situations. And he has the leg, but he doesn't have more leg than Will. We saw Will hit from 62 yesterday with room to spare outside. I watched Blake hit from 59 today, kind of limped over. He made it. It was a good kick. But it's like, where is the difference being had there? And I don't know if it exists. I think Blake could be an NFL kicker. I just don't think he's going to be your starter for the Saints.
No, I'm just hoping that all the other teams don't, have a beat on him and bring him in if they need a kicker, and it's someone that, the doomsday scenario of Lutz gets hurt and they can, short list of names that Groupie's on that they can pull him back in. But definitely impressed with the kid because, as you know, it's just so small in stature, but still able to generate those, a decent amount of length on those kicks. But like you said, he did pull up short in that, what was it, a 45, 46 yarder?
It wasn't short.
Wide on that, but he just cleared something though.
He made it from 59.
Yeah, 59. It was just barely over kind of.
He got over. It was not over by a lot, but it got over. And he missed wide right from 44. These were indoors. I mean, I'm not going to say I hope he doesn't get a job. If the team shows up and wants to claim him, good for him. Like I don't think the Saints are going to try to hide him from the world, because I don't think Will Lutz is on his last legs either. Like there's a scenario where he kicks for 4 or 5 more seasons, and you're like, okay, well that was a fun offseason with Blake. Like it's like the Ravens aren't disappointed that they still have Justin Tucker, right? So I don't know. The other one is Blake Gillikin and Lou Hedley, which I still think is a competition. We haven't really seen a lot from Hedley. He hasn't kicked a ton, and you've seen a couple days of Blake Gillikin kicking well. I think that he probably has that job. We're gonna see in the preseason. I'd like to see Lou boom some kicks, but I think it's Blake's job to lose. And we'll see. But those two position battles, I don't think are much of a battle. Those guys would have had to really fall on their face, Blake and Will, to turn that into something, and I don't see that happening.
No, and you mentioned with Lutz, obviously he had an injury 2 years ago, looked to be back last season, but there were times we saw him struggle with the intermediate kicks. And yeah, obviously that's not acceptable no matter what.
Yeah, and that's going to be something he talked about that in his interview, I think yesterday, and yeah, he's aware of that.
Right. Clearly, yeah.
And so yeah, we'll see. Like, but it's not like you're talking about a structural problem. You're not talking about a length problem in terms of he's still got the leg. If you can make it from 62 at any point, I'm not concerned about your leg strength. And so that's what we have. But let's move on. So the last position battle we'll talk about is the biggest position battle that everyone's excited about, which is Paulson Adebo, Alontae Taylor. Both guys have been really fun to watch. Both have been very physical, especially in the 1v1 reps. Alontae Taylor and Chris Olave have gone back and forth. What you can say is Chris Olave has made some really incredible catches. He had a really great highlight today going up over Alontae, basically caught it on top of his helmet. He had a one-handed catch in 1v1s the other day. Alontae Taylor actually had an interception on one of those reps. What I will say is even those 2 catches by Olave, Alontae basically forced an incredible catch. And if you're a defensive back and the only catch that can beat you is a crazy one-handed grab or, some insane contested catch, then you at least can say you controlled that rep. And sometimes good offense beats good defense. But I think both guys have looked good. Adebo, I think, is still kind of the physical guy that you see him hold up against a Mike Thomas a little better, because he's just able to be more physical at the point of the catch. And maybe there's some illegal contact happening, maybe there's some PI happening, but that's going to be across the board. I think it's going to go down to the preseason games. I think you're going to see Marshawn in this first game, at least based on what Dennis Allen said. But then I think for week 2, week 3, you're going to get, Paulson on one side, Alontae on the other, and you're going to kind of weigh what you see from them and go from there. I'm still leaning toward Paulson. I haven't seen anything thus far that's going to change that for me. But again, it's like you're looking at it and saying both of these guys could start and play well. And so you're not going to be upset if you're starting the 30-year guy over the second-year guy.
And I'm sure there's going to obviously be opportunities for them to be on the field together kind of thing. But it's like, how do you keep everybody happy in that corner room?
I mean, you're not guaranteed a starting job. Like, they know this. And, you say everybody, but you have 3 of the 4 on the field. So,
right.
I mean, I don't think that's something you're super concerned about. And, we all saw what happened last year. It like the odds that you even get through 3 weeks without at least one injury are slim, let alone go the entire season without it. So like even in game, like some guy gets rolled up on and suddenly you need a replacement, like you have to have that guy. And I don't think Alontae is the type to sit in the corner and pout because he's not that guy. So I'm not worried about that. He'll have his time. He'll have his moment. But again, he hasn't lost that job. I think he could still go out and win that job. I just think he's, Paulson is slightly ahead. But they've both looked good. That's the thing, and I can't stress that enough. Is like you're picking 2 good options. You're picking between 2 good options here, and I think when you see Alante, there have been points where he gets lost in coverage a little bit. And I think it's tough to gauge. It's tough because I think you're kind of working with new pieces and you're trying to find your way. But there have been a couple times that you've seen him get kind of turned around. And I don't know, like everyone has those moments. But yeah, I think that's where I'm at with it.
And I definitely want to see, obviously, the takeaways, the interceptions from both of them, instead of just passes defensed. We need to see holding in those interceptions and causing the turnover. Please complete it.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a single interception by either of them. I don't think I've seen an interception by Marshawn either. I think we've gotten interceptions by. Oh no, I'm sorry. We did get one from Alante in the 1v1s, but those are tough. Like I don't even consider those real interceptions for the quarterbacks either.
Just at team drills, right?
Yeah, because it's a lot easier to get an interception when you know the ball is coming.
Yeah.
Right? Like the ball has to come out. So it's kind of it's still a great play and you give him credit for it. But I'm not gonna say that's technically an interception because in a game you're not running a route or defending a route saying, okay, the ball's definitely coming. So when he comes out of his break, I'm ready. Anyway. But yeah, we haven't seen that. That's something that concerned me last year and it still concerns me is like I don't see this team coming up with a ton of interceptions. And maybe it's good quarterback play, right? Like maybe you can say, wow, Derek Carr has really protected the ball. But after last year and we saw the lack of turnovers, it's hard to lean on that as the culprit.
No, even I forget who it was the other day. There was a tip ball, and once again it falls to the ground. Nobody even near it, and it's like, what the heck? Why can't we get any of these? And it seems like Tyrann Mathieu might be the only dude that seems to be in place to get a tip ball interception. Everyone else doesn't seem to be there. I don't know. It's really frustrating because you kind of see it hanging up in the air and you figure someone's about to come in and snatch it and it just doesn't happen. Not like it's something that's constantly a factor, but it just seems if there is a tip ball, for the most part, I'll say like 8 out of 10 times the Saints ain't coming up with it.
No, that sounds fair. But yeah, and that's I will say that I think Alante does a better job of setting up interceptions than Paulson. So if you're looking for a point of difference between them, and Alante didn't come down with them last year either, but he created the opportunities for them and he drove on them and he just couldn't corral them. One of them he did, and it was wiped out by a penalty that happened behind him that had nothing to do with the play. So like you can't put that on him. One of them he caught going out of bounds, and they overturned it on review, saying, what is a catch? Whatever.
No.
But he did have those opportunities, and he created those opportunities. So you give him credit for that. But yeah, I think that's going to be something to watch. Both of those position battles are going to be fun to watch in the preseason, and we're going to get into more about the preseason in the next episode of the week. I'm not going to do an episode where we kind of break down my whole roster projection because I'm going to redo it on Monday after the preseason game and we can go through it then. But I would like to do a mailbag later this week. So keep an eye out for that. Maybe Thursday. The timing becomes difficult because don't they have a later practice, or is that next week?
No, I think that's next week.
Yeah.
That is next week.
So we should be able to do
before
like
you go out to LA.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. You're going out to LA. Yeah. So maybe I'll do a mailbag. Well, yeah, but not this week. I'm talking about Thursday.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe I'll be able to do a mailbag sometime Thursday afternoon. So keep an eye out for that. We'll figure it out. We'll get there. We'll get it done. But that's gonna wrap it up for us on this episode of Inside Black and Gold. Hope you learned something. It's hot. I'm sweating in my house. And we're gonna keep this coming at you. The Saints are off on Tuesday, so there will be no Saints camp content, but I'll be able to at least catch up on some of these interviews that have been rolling in like hotcakes.
Yeah, just to take a breather away. I mean, obviously we're not going through it like these players are, but yeah, the grind of training camp continues for the media too. It's just to to stay on top of, like you said, we get to talk to X amount of players every day, and to sometimes you miss some of those nuggets, and it's definitely worth going over it again.
Yeah, especially after being outside in the sun for an hour and then having to go inside and pretend to be coherent is not
and not thinking about lunch.
Not my strong suit. Let's put it that way. It's not something I'm particularly good at. As you can probably tell, I'm like exhausted. Like I probably sound exhausted because I'm just like, so frazzled. But we'll get through it. It's like this every year.
There's no light at the end of the tunnel, as they say.
Yeah, that's a great Dennis Allen line to really get you motivated.
Just put your head down and grind, right?
It is pitch black. Just keep walking, even though you don't know if it ever ends. Anyway, that's words to live by. But all right. Thanks, everyone, for listening to the Inside Black and Gold. It's been fun. As always, I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. You can follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. Him at Steve Geller WWL, and on Twitter at Saints_pod. If you have anything you'd like us to talk about on the show, hit me up on Twitter. DMs are open. And we're going to get into it. Saints, Chiefs on Sunday. We'll have an episode later in the week getting a bit into more preview on that. I don't really care about the Chiefs, so I'm not going to spend one iota of time coming up with information to share with you about the Kansas City Chiefs preseason lineup. But so if you're looking for that podcast, go find it somewhere else.
I'm always excited, though, to be back in Dome Sweet Dome. I love the Superdome. And even if it is just preseason, it is still football. Guys are competing for jobs. So I am excited for it, as everyone, usually complains, preseason football stinks. I still think it has value, obviously.
Yeah, and I'll be on the sideline, so that'll be fun. All right.
That's always fun.
Yes, sir. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Who dat? Go Saints. Peace.
See you in the dome.